All right, there's a lot going on here, but we're going to work through this. Okay. Now, first of all, let me explain a couple of things with regards to eligibility. I'm going to cover that, and I'm also going to cover. And I'm giving you the practical answer. I'm not going to sit there and spout off what the exact law is, because under this law, every parent should know that there are gray areas. It is not what we call in the law black letter law, to where it's inflexible. It's a flexible law, and it's designed to bend. Okay. Now there's requirements, there's guidelines, there's best practice, all of those things that go into the application of these regulations and these rules. But at the same time, and I agree with this, you don't necessarily want to box yourself into a corner, because it is an individualized program. And if we are too rigid in our application, then we are missing many, many children where the human beings that went into designing these things did not anticipate this child, that child, your child, my child, and those other things. So on a level, we need to be flexible. At the same time, when we are flexible, then we're put into a position where we're dealing with other human beings that are ignorant or that are evil, that have a personal difference. I mean, somebody who does apply it in a rigid fashion. I've known many school people that apply a flexible law in a inflexible manner. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. So in your particular situation, the school district has 100% of the duty to provide a free and appropriate public education. I try to tell this to parents all the time. I mean, I have parents that go out and they'll spend themselves to death getting specialists and evaluations, and this evaluation and that evaluation, and they want it all packaged together. They'll even put it in a Tiffany box to have it look so beautiful and blue. It's beautiful. And then they deliver it to the school system. And then the school system just goes, yeah, so? And you go, but it's in a Tiffany box, and it's beautiful, and it's nice, and we spend a lot of money on it. And the district personnel looks at it and goes, yeah, thanks. Now, why? Why do they do that? Because they have 100% of the duty. They have the right to first refusal. They can take your evaluations that you provide them in good faith. They've got to take it into consideration in good faith, but they're not mandated to use them. They're not mandated to use them on questions of eligibility. See, that's your job. If whatever they do you don't agree with or was wrong, then that's where you trigger the dispute resolution process and you bring out your evaluations and show where they were wrong. But if you don't do that, then, whatever they do is what they do. And parents need to understand that. But they have their right of first refusal. They don't have to take your stuff. They just have to take it into consideration. Yes, you're a valuable member of the IEP team. True. But at the same time, when it comes to evaluations and determinations of eligibility, there's a little bit more flexibility granted to the school system, which it's a double-edged sword. Because if they do not do it the right way, and yet they had the information available to them through your private evaluations, then you see it puts you in a stronger position to trigger the dispute resolution options and have those things corrected. Okay, so that's why they do things like that. Now, with regards to the hearing, I would theorize. Okay, now do I think that it's probably the smart thing for your school system to recognize the hearing loss? Absolutely. Absolutely. But the thing is, see, now he's wearing hearing aids. So therefore, according to them, that deficit no longer exists. Now, legally, they're supposed to take your child in their natural state. And the natural state would be without the hearing aids and with hearing loss. And so therefore you would be justified in requesting those accommodations and potential supplemental aids and services to assist. But it's the same argument that I make for the ADHD parents that choose to medicate their child, for example, and then the school comes back and says, I'm sorry, your child doesn't qualify for an IEP, because what are the major components to qualify for an IEP? Behavior rating scales. Behavior rating scales are largely filled out by teaching staff. And if the teaching staff are not seeing the behaviors that are the major components of ADHD symptoms, now why aren't they seeing them? Because you're medicating your child. And so therefore your child's not in their natural state. And you can't blame the staff filling out the behavior rating scales, because the staff has only seen your child in a medicated state. So it's the same idea when it comes to, or at least I'm theorizing that that's the same idea of why they're not necessarily recognizing it, is because the artificial, which I'm not by any means, I'm just theorizing. I'm not encouraging you not to have him wear his hearing aids. But at the same time, I'm telling you, you got to sort of pick your battles, and that's not the one you need to pick right now, in my viewpoint, in your scenario that you presented. So what if your child likely qualifies under multiple exceptionalities, but the district only offers one of these? Guys, I can't even tell you. I know that what was the next thing that struck me? I had to disagree with the autism, but how do I get the team to look at SLI, DD, or OHI? Now, I don't know whether your child has a diagnosis of autism. I saw that where your child was getting behavior, has a language disorder, and is getting behavior therapy. And if your child meets the minimum requirements for autism under that exceptionality, then I'm not catching where the problem is there. And I'm not catching where maybe you've heard myths that particular exceptionality is a death sentence and lack of inclusion into a general education setting. Can I also provide you what, in my experience, is the biggest death sentences to general education inclusion? Being classified as multiple disability. All right? Why is that? Because you want to keep it simple. Absolutely keep it simple. If your child has a diagnosis or multiple diagnoses, then I'm telling you, you're treading on dangerous ground, because you're dealing with an education institution full of humans, and many of these humans do not understand complex natures of disabilities, just like you. Let's say your child has a rare genetic malfunction or deletion or whatever they're going to call it, and it's very, very rare, but it manifests like autism. Okay, which I've had many cases like that. Oh, well, it's a rare genetic deletion, blah, blah, blah. It's named this, but it manifests like autism. Great. Do you know what you just need to talk to the school about? That it's autism. Now, why is that? Because we already know the peer-reviewed, scientifically based treatments for autism. That's what the school's mandated to do under 2004 IDEA, is use the peer-reviewed scientific approaches that we know work for that disability and that exceptionality. Okay, we know that with autism there's going to be a high likelihood of language disorder. There's going to be behavioral needs. There's going to be learning disabilities that manifest similar to dyslexia. All of those things can be components of how autism manifests for a particular child. So at that point, you've got your foot in the door. Your child qualifies. Once your child qualifies, then everything is on the table with regards to educational performance need, for supplemental aids and services, for accommodations. All of those things are on the table. So why would you need to go get a separate exceptionality recognition for speech language impairment or developmental delay. And I can tell you, why would you want to put your child in a position to where you're wanting to give your child the exceptionality in the form of developmental disability that goes away at 9? Let's say your child has made major gains in progress, but there are still other components and concerns that if your child had autism down here, then those components, even though your child progresses and let's say they shed the speech language component deficits and they shed other aspects, your child still has that diagnostic that they carried forward, which means that other components have been recognized by the team. If you just carry developmental disability, or let's say speech language impairment, which is one of the easiest things to disqualify a child for, and then it becomes a real pain in the patootie to have them recognize the other aspects of the child's disability. So I'm not seeing the benefit, because you're going to have to, your child is going to, first of all, maturation, your child's going to progress. Your child's going to get better in many areas. You're doing a lot of private therapy. The school's going to be doing their interaction. Your child is going to improve. So if they're stuck with DD and then you come to that critical point, you have a high likelihood that it's not going to move on. So I wouldn't have refused the autism, quite frankly. I would have stuck with that. All the other things can be folded into that as natural components of deficits that the IEP would then address through supplemental aids and services, through accommodations, through services and goal development. And everything that you're asking for can be tucked into that. And you keep it simple. Keep it simple. The more stuff that you pile on the school, oh, my child has this, my child is comorbid this, my child... all you're doing is inviting the school to sit there and say, God, that kid's screwed up. Let's just make them comfortable. And then what you end up running a high likelihood is having them lowball your child through the merciful act of soft bigotry, of low expectation. That's the reality of putting too much on the school. Keep it narrow, keep it simple, keep it focused, and that is a much a better approach in getting yourself an IEP that fully encompasses all of your child's needs.